My daughter and I and a couple of others, we were talking and crying. It was very late at night, and my cell phone was beeping because the battery was wearing down. And so I just hit the button to turn the power off, but for the first time it didn't go off. Something very different happened. And the one and only picture that I had of Linda on my phone flashed full screen and froze there, and we felt her so profoundly connected with us. And it was in that moment that I felt this profound shift within me, even toward these men who had killed her. For me, the powerful emotion that I felt over and over again was this connection, this compassion for people who must have gone through something truly terrible to have committed such a terrible crime against a woman who was so beloved and so cared for by everyone that knew her. And there was a song that I wrote and performed at her funeral, and it was a way of both healing my heart but also imagining what Linda would say from the other side of the veil if she could reach back and speak to us about oneness. And if ever you forget me, just call me by my name, and my soul, it will answer time and time again. And if ever you should leave me, I'm never really gone. You can find me deep within you, in the one.
If you have a spiritual practice, when those insights occur, they integrate into your way of living. They don't wipe you out, nor that they just fade into the recesses of memory as to a wonderful moment you once had. Integrates into you. And that sense of oneness and unity becomes more real than anything.
Do you have a destiny? Moses believed that his destiny was to lead the Israelites out of Egypt into the Promised Land, while on the other hand, Forrest Gump felt that life is like a box of chocolates and you never know what you're going to get. It can be a little scary trying to tackle an idea so big, but it might be worth another look, since the final key to experiencing yourself as an embodiment of God is to uncover your deepest yearning and your reason for living.
The calling is always upon us. There's always something within us that wants to become conscious of itself as us. It's called the next stage of our evolution. There's something within all of us that we must express.
So Moses represents you and me, an ordinary person on an ordinary day having an extraordinary experience, where Moses climbs a mountain and there he has an encounter with a presence that shows up as this flame in a bush that is burning, but the bush won't be consumed, meaning that the source of this presence isn't in the material realm. The source of this presence comes from and is presencing that which is divine and eternal. And Moses doesn't know quite what to do with this, as either you or I would do. He knows there's something in him that knows this is about to completely transform his life.
Now, I consider myself a fairly spiritual person. But if I was sitting here today and the bush were to start burning, in my mind, I'd go get the fire extinguisher.
The bush is always glowing. I had an opportunity to be with a powerful shaman in Africa a few years ago, and we were traveling at night, and I was kind of stumbling, and they were just walking through the jungle like it was daylight. And we went out to a clearing and had this very powerful experience out there, and after the experience, everything was lit up. Everything was aglow with this fire. The leaves were on fire, the ground was on fire, everything was aglow. And I was aware that these individuals that were taking me through the jungle, they were seeing like this. They had this night vision that allowed them to see the luminosity from all of nature. And in that instant, I had the same thing. I had that kind of a spiritual night vision that allowed me to see that everything was ablaze with the Spirit of God. And I thought about Moses seeing the burning bush. At that moment, he was in transcendent awareness, that he could see clearly that God is everywhere and everything is aglow with this fire, this power, and this presence. Moses was having a good day.
When Moses asks the bush, asks this flame, asks this presence, "Who are you?" he hears, "I am that I am." And we don't know whether the conversation is actually audible in human terms or it's a transmission from the knower that is everywhere present into his heart. But nevertheless, this communication says something. And the communication is this: there is a journey that you are to take. Joseph Campbell would later call that the hero's journey. That there's a journey that is for each one of us to take, that takes us from our local, temporal, egoistic point of view or self to an understanding, a person of destiny, a person of wholeness and completeness, and that journey is the Moses journey.
Moses didn't think he was worthy, and so that unworthiness combined with willingness provided a space for the presence of God to come through, because Moses wasn't blocking God out with his ego.
So the rest of the story is both a literal story, a historic story, but it's also a meta story. It's a story of you and the story of me. And all the characters in that story are parts of ourselves. So Moses is then told that he must go and free the slaves, and he is to take them to the promised land, or to fulfillment, to the land of milk and honey. And he questions, I can't do this. I mean, he stutters, he can't speak well. He's like, who am I to do this? And you and I feel the same way. When a dream, an idea, a calling, something calls to us about make a difference, give something, do something in your local community, do something for the world, do something for your family, do something. And right away we feel like, oh, I'm not up to it. I don't have what is required. I'm not enough for that.
I think everyone has to come to grips with the fact that if there's a destiny within all of us, there's something calling all of us, and we are presently not the person that can deliver that destiny. We grow into it as we say yes to it. There's an old statement that God does not call the qualified, God qualifies the called. So that when we answer that call, then the presence qualifies you. It qualified me. I didn't have all of the skills. I didn't have the resources. I didn't have the money. I didn't have the space. Didn't have anything. But God qualified me through my yes. So people showed up, resources showed up, buildings showed up, individuals who could catch the vision that I was articulating showed up, and then I changed. I grew. So the person that said yes is not the same person sitting here today. The person that's sitting here today saying yes to the next stage of the vision will not be the person that inherits and articulates and manifests that aspect of the vision. We're constantly evolving and growing and unfolding based on our ability and our willingness and our capacity to say, yes, I'm willing, yes.
And so Moses agrees to the journey. And there's that part of us that says yes to our own destiny, that says yes to our purpose as we discover it. And then, of course, comes having to encounter Pharaoh. Not only the historic Pharaoh, but the personal Pharaoh. The personal Pharaoh is our intellect. It's the part of us that's all made an agreement with the kingdom of our lives as we've known it, with everything just as it is, the status quo, the comfort zone. And then there's this part of us that wants to emerge, this part of us that wants to make a difference. And there's a whole argument that goes on internally about, no, I'm not about to make that change. And ultimately, in this story, which is your story and my story, the hero's journey, the trouble builds up. The trouble gets tougher. Things get more and more complicated. And finally, in desperation, Pharaoh says, okay, go ahead. Take the people and go.